Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, wow, you've sent us some truly compelling material. We're going on quite an intense journey into the history of Vedic knowledge. And the deeply controversial role a key figure apparently played in its translation.
Yes, it's quite a narrative.
So our mission today is to really explore this claim, this idea of a systematic, deliberate distortion of sacred Indian scriptures.
Right.
And to try and understand the long-lasting impact this alleged manipulation has had. It seems the echoes are still felt today.
Indeed. This deep dive, based on the source material you sent, presents a powerful and I'd say provocative narrative. It's alleging a concerted, deliberate effort.
Oh, it's just a mistake.
Not just mistakes, according to this view, a real effort to manipulate foundational texts. So we're going to try and understand not just what supposedly happened, but the crucial why behind it, and how these historical interpretations can profoundly shape cultural identity, nationally, even individually.
That makes sense.
We'll be looking closely at the specific claims about Max Muller's translations.
Right, he's central.
And the broader British colonial agenda that, the source argues, really underpinned his work.
Exactly. So get ready, because we might uncover some surprising historical claims here. And we need to consider how these narratives, even from centuries ago, might still resonate today. And how we think about identity, about knowledge itself. This isn't just, dusty old text. It's presented as the very foundation of self-perception.
It touches on cultural continuity, absolutely.
Okay, so our source really doesn't hold back. It dives right in with this really compelling, maybe even audacious argument.
Yes.
That there was a systematic conspiracy by the British to distort Vedic knowledge. That's the core premise.
A conspiracy, that's a strong word.
It is, and it paints this picture of deliberate, calculated manipulation. So effective, apparently, that it led the native people of India to view their own sacred texts.
The bedrock of their culture.
Exactly. To view them with suspicion, maybe even shame.
That's a profound claim. That it wasn't just misunderstanding, but intentional.
Right, meticulously planned, a long-term thing. And the source even says it promises to uncover the truths that have either remained hidden for decades or have been deliberately concealed from us.
So it sets up an investigative tone right away.
It really does. It's kind of challenging us, to look beyond the surface narratives we might have heard, to question how information about these ancient traditions, especially sacred texts, has been presented.
Through whose lens, essentially?
Yes, exactly. Through which lenses over generations. It's sort of a call to reevaluate what we think we know.
Okay, so if we broaden that out, the source argues this alleged distortion wasn't just some isolated incident.
No.
It was part of a much larger colonial strategy. The big objective, it claims, was pretty clear: systematically weaken Hinduism and, by extension, Indian society.
Why? For what purpose?
Well, according to this, to advance their own imperial interests. And a key way to do that was undermining India's indigenous knowledge systems.
So it's not just about land or money.
No, the argument is deeper. It was strategic, involving the deliberate destruction of India's existing, apparently quite robust, education system. Specifically, it points to the Gurukul system.
Okay, tell us a bit about that. What was a Gurukul?
Well, a Gurukul was essentially a traditional residential school. The students, the shishas, would live with their guru, their teacher, for years.
Immersive.
Very immersive. It was holistic education, not just spiritual or intellectual, but practical skills, martial arts, ethics, often tailored to the student. It fostered a deep bond, teacher-student, and a connection to heritage.
Sounds quite different from the British model.
Precisely. And the source claims this system was intentionally dismantled and replaced with the British English education model, designed, it says, to cultivate a completely different mindset.
And what about the Brahmins? The source mentioned them specifically.
Yes, that's another striking point. It claims there was deliberate cultivation of hatred towards Brahmins. Historically, they were the scholars, priests, the keepers of the traditions, including the Vedas.
So targeting them meant targeting the knowledge itself.
That's the argument, severing the living link to this deep knowledge. The source even uses this provocative phrase, saying that while the British had no idea how to cook food, India had this incredibly rich history, unparalleled scriptures like the Vedas, global education centers like Nalanda and Takshashila, ancient universities, really.
Drawing a sharp contrast.
A very sharp contrast, suggesting a deliberate campaign against what it sees as a highly advanced civilization. And central to this alleged plan was Lord Macaulay.
Macaulay's Minute, famous or infamous?
Exactly. Brought to India, the source says, specifically to ensure Indians remain Indians by birth, but were turned into Englishmen in education and mindset.
And they claim this worked, that it's still visible.
That's the assertion, that the success of this agenda is still visible today. It implies a really deep, long-lasting impact on identity, on perception.
So it wasn't just about ruling, but about fundamentally changing how people thought. Cultural subjugation.
That's the picture painted, yes. Dismantling a thriving indigenous educational system as a core part of that strategy.
Wow. That's a powerful and, frankly, uncomfortable claim.
Right.
So into this really complex, charged landscape steps Max Muller.
Right.
Our source describes him as a German scholar, specifically recruited, brought in by the East India Company to work for the British Raj.
Okay.
And his job, monumental. Translating some of the most sacred foundational texts of India, the Vedas, other scriptures.
A huge undertaking.
Huge. But the way our source frames it,
Yeah.
this wasn't, pure objective scholarship for the good of knowledge.
Not just academic curiosity.
Not according to this.
Yeah.
It's depicted as a deliberate blow to India's soul. That's the phrase used. With reaper discussions, I think they mean repercussions.
Yes, repercussions.
Repercussions that are still being felt today. So it positions Muller not as just a scholar, but as a strategic pawn.
A tool in this larger colonial agenda.
Exactly. Designed, the source claims, to inflict lasting cultural damage, not just shed light on ancient texts.
That immediately brings up a critical question, doesn't it? About the very legitimacy of his work.
How so?
Well, the source makes this very strong, quite controversial claim that Muller, despite being given this huge task, had neither an adequate understanding of Sanskrit nor of English.
Wait, neither. Not even English properly.
That's the assertion, which, if true, isn't just a minor critique of his interpretation, it goes to the heart of it.
It implies he wasn't even capable of the task.
Precisely. The source uses that vivid analogy. This is akin to asking a blind person to describe the beauty of sunlight, suggesting a fundamental incapacity.
Okay, that's blunt.
It is, and it gets more pointed. The material alleges the British authorities knew about this supposed lack of expertise.
They knew.
And not only knew, but deliberately desired a disastrous outcome.
Hold on. They wanted bad translations.
That's the claim, that the poor quality, the potential misinterpretations weren't accidents. They were orchestrated outcomes to serve the bigger agenda.
That sounds incredibly cynical. Manipulation of scholarship itself.
It paints a picture of intellectual pursuits being subverted for political ends, yes. Using error as a tool for control.
So, okay, let's assume for a moment the source is right about these translations being flawed, maybe intentionally flawed. What was the impact, the real-world effect?
Well, the source describes it as truly profound, far-reaching, an entire generation already influenced by the British education system.
Right.
They studied and reflected upon Indian scriptures through the lens of the flawed translations commissioned by the British.
So they were learning about their own heritage through a distorted mirror.
That's the idea, and this allegedly led to absurd interpretations. Not just wrong, but often, denigrating interpretations.
And the effects linger.
The source claims the negative effects still confront us today. It even gives examples like the burning of books and hateful commentary by certain individuals.
So it fueled actual conflict and self-rejection.
That's the suggestion, that these interpretations fueled social discord, religious animosity. So Muller, in this narrative, isn't just a translator. He's a keystone in the British strategy to weaken Hinduism.
A critical piece in the puzzle.
An indispensable instrument in this alleged scheme to undermine the spiritual and cultural foundation of a civilization.
So his work, according to this, fundamentally shaped how a whole culture saw its own sacred heritage.
Leading to long-lasting effects, yes. Perpetuating a distorted self-perception that continues to manifest.
What's really fascinating, or maybe disturbing, is the assertion that these errors weren't just, mistakes, scholarly slips.
Oh, the claim is much stronger.
It says they were deliberate, sanctioned by the British authorities.
Yes, with a very specific strategic goal to instill shame in people about their identity, thus making them turn toward another.
Turn toward another, what? Another religion.
That's the strong implication, specifically Christianity, or maybe just a more westernized cultural identity altogether.
And this connects back to the Gurukuls,
Exactly. The source reiterates that context.
Yeah.
While the indigenous gurukuls were providing this advanced holistic education, the British felt they needed to manipulate the source of that knowledge.
Through translators like Muller.
Translators who, as we just discussed, were allegedly neither proficient Sanskrit scholars nor authentic interpreters in the traditional sense.
So their goal wasn't accuracy.
The material claims their objective was quite clearly not accurate translation, but the weakening of Hinduism's spiritual foundation.
Wow. Using translation as a weapon, almost?
As a powerful tool for cultural change, yes. Aiming to erode the spiritual bedrock, not foster understanding or dialogue. It presents a very clear, almost Machiavellian intent.
Okay, this alleged manipulation of sacred texts. It becomes even more significant when we link it, as the source does, to the wider context of British colonization.
Right, the bigger picture.
The source dates the start of that era to 1757. Battle of Plassey, ushering in this period of exploitation, political control, but also, crucially, cultural imperialism. And the argument is, the British figured out pretty quickly that to really control the Hindu population, they needed more than just armies or economics.
They need to get inside people's heads.
Something like that.
Yeah.
They needed to alienate them from the Vedic framework that guided their lives, undermine the core cultural operating system, as you put it earlier.
A foundation.
The foundation of everything. Hindu systems, knowledge, scriptures, culture, daily life, ethics, social structure.
And the Brahmins were key to that framework.
That's what the source emphasizes. As the custodians of this knowledge, their wisdom was systematically embedded in societal governance and royal decision-making. So they represented a real obstacle.
Making them and the knowledge they held direct targets.
Exactly. It's about discrediting and dismantling the wellspring of cultural and spiritual identity.
Which raises that question about scale again. If they wanted to dismantle this Vedic structure, targeting the Gurukul tradition was key.
And the numbers mentioned are staggering.
Over 100,000 institutions at the time. That's the claim. It suggests a truly widespread, deeply integrated educational system.
Accessible across the subcontinent.
Apparently so. And then the source asks that really poignant rhetorical question aimed right at you, the listener. Today, where are those gurukuls?
Highlighting the loss.
The perceived catastrophic loss and the alleged success of the British agenda to eradicate it. So this systematic effort, distorting texts, dismantling education, it was all designed, the source claims, to create an ideology that justified their colonial objective.
And Miller's translations were a key part of that strategy.
A crucial part, yes. And interestingly, the source notes this wasn't entirely new. It was influenced by Portuguese and Italian missionaries who'd been in India centuries earlier.
So a long-term blueprint for cultural change.
That's the implication. A multi-generational tactic where manipulating knowledge was central. Targeting such a vast educational system really does suggest a profound systematic approach.
Not just controlling, but replacing the source of knowledge with a colonial narrative.
Altering the very fabric of society.
Okay, now, building on this idea of systemic control, of cultural re-engineering, the source makes a really bold claim, maybe one of the boldest.
Yes.
About the caste system, something many see as, intrinsically Indian.
Right. Foundational for many people's understanding of Indian society.
Well, this source suggests the term caste itself was a colonial insertion. It says the term caste was introduced into the translations of scriptures, even though it was never part of the Indian system.
Introduced? You mean the word itself?
The word itself. It traces caste to the Portuguese casta, meaning race or lineage. And it says a quick search shows casta predates any mention of caste in Indian texts.
So the implication is this rigid classification wasn't originally there?
That it was an external concept inserted into the narrative, then amplified. The source is quite direct. It challenges the listener. Show me where in the Vedas, Puranas, or Manusmriti these 2,378 castes are listed.
Those are foundational texts. Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, Manusmriti.
And the source asserts emphatically, not a single scripture mentions such a division. Then it points to that 1901 census, Herbert Risley.
Ah, yes, the census known for its detailed ethnographic and caste classifications,
which cataloged 378 castes and subcastes. The source slams the methodology, arguing it was done because dividing the population was essential for the British.
Divide and rule.
Precisely. And it notes this number has supposedly ballooned since then to 3,000 castes and 25,000 subcastes today, cementing this division.
So it's arguing a fundamental societal descriptor was externally imposed and expanded for control.
That's the core argument. not intrinsic to ancient heritage, but a tool. It's a really challenging idea.
It certainly is. And if we connect that back to the broader colonial agenda, the claim is that this categorizing, this explicit division by caste, was strategic.
Not just observing, but constructing.
Constructing. It argues this wasn't an accurate reflection of indigenous social structures, which the source implies might have been more fluid based on occupation or spiritual roles, not rigid birth hierarchy, jati as caste.
But the British made it rigid.
Solidified it, codified it through things like the census. The 1901 census is presented as key evidence of this division being a tool to fragment society.
Why? What was the benefit for them?
Divide and conquer, essentially. Easier to govern, exploit, prevent unified resistance. By cementing these divisions, they could foster internal conflicts, divert attention from themselves.
So it challenges the very authenticity of the caste system, as we often understand it today.
Suggesting it was deliberately constructed, or at least significantly shaped and weaponized, to serve colonial aims. Not just passively observed, but actively engineered for control.
Which brings us back to that crucial question, why? Why would Max Muller, a respected scholar, allegedly do this? Deliberately distort sacred texts?
The motivation.
Yes. And the source claims to have the answer. It cites documented evidence and Max Muller's own words, revealing, it says, his true, shocking intentions.
And what were they?
The core belief driving him, according to this material, was that by weakening the spiritual foundation of Hinduism, the conversion of Hindus to Christianity could be made easier.
Wow, that's a direct. Framing his work as a tool for evangelism.
That's the accusation, a calculated religious and political strategy disguised as scholarship. The source says he saw Hinduism as a threat to Christian dominance and was fully committed to dismantling it.
And the British supported this.
That's the claim.
Yeah.
That his work was supported by British colonialists with financial backing. They, in turn, saw this manipulation as a way to exploit and control the Indian population.
Because people alienated from their roots are easier to govern.
Exactly. The source even points to specific examples, like his letters. It mentions correspondence where he reportedly wrote something like, the ancient religion of India is doomed. If Christianity could come in, it would be a blessing.
So they present this as proof of his evangelistic drive.
As undeniable evidence, yes. A mix of religious fervor and colonial ambition working together under the cover of translation.
What's really striking then is how the source connects this historical agenda all the way to today, present-day society.
How so?
It argues the impact of all these efforts, the education changes, the biased translations, the cultural undermining. It's visible even today in certain segments of society, more than 75 years after independence.
How does it manifest?
The legacy, it claims, is that many Indians remained Indian by birth, but made to think like the British mentally. That phrase again.
Mental servitude.
A kind of internalized colonial mindset that still shapes interactions, values, self-perception. It points to something tangible. Those who speak English are often given more respect than those who speak Sanskrit, Hindi, or their native languages.
A linguistic hierarchy as a direct result.
That's the argument. English elevated as the language of power, prestige. So this English dominance, fostered by the colonial project, combined with Muller's alleged work.
It was good for their objectives, the source says.
But disastrous for Indian identity. Exactly. Proved disastrous for Indian identity, creating this deep gap between heritage and an imposed framework, fostering a sense of inferiority that, according to this, still affects the collective psyche.
So what did this mean for the generations who grew up after this, who inherited this altered landscape?
Well, the source describes a really tragic cycle. These manipulated interpretations fostered, it says, a profound sense of guilt and inferiority about one's own heritage.
Guilt about being Indian.
About their traditions, their scriptures. Miller's translations, it claims, were key in doing several things: undermining Hinduism's spiritual foundations, justifying colonial oppression, dividing people, and maybe most damagingly, perpetuated the myth that Hinduism was inferior to other religions.
And the source says people bought into it.
That's the tragic part, it contends. We accepted this theory. It gives examples like Darwin's theory of evolution and the Aryan Invasion Theory.
Okay, the Aryan Invasion Theory is complex and largely disputed now. But how does Darwin fit in? It seems the source lumps them together as external theories presented as facts. That because the British said so, these became unquestionable truth for many, replacing indigenous knowledge or perspectives.
So accepting external narratives uncritically.
Yes. And this mindset, it argues passionately, filled us with such profound guilt about our own heritage. leading to widespread self-doubt.
Which made people vulnerable.
Made countless Indians fall into the hands of missionaries, making religious conversions more accessible. It paints this picture of internalized external narratives, creating a deep identity crisis, spiritual vulnerability.
So if we pull all this together, the source isn't just, pointing fingers at the past.
No, it seemed to have a clear message for today.
Absolutely. It's issuing a strong, clear call to action. It urges the listener to rise above these colonial indicators of mental servitude. That's a powerful phrase.
It is. What's the action proposed?
To reclaim our heritage and reassert our identity as original Indian Hindus. And the solution offered is fundamental: education, knowledge, and a deep understanding of our sacred texts.
Going back to the source.
Exactly. Study the Vedas, Upanishads, and Puranas, and understand them in their original context, before the alleged colonial interference. It's about independent intellectual effort, rediscovery.
Countering the distortions.
Yes. And it also advocates supporting organizations and individuals who work to promote Hinduism and challenge the distortions and misinterpretations against our faith.
So, moving from victimhood to agency.
Precisely. Empowerment through knowledge. A proactive, collective approach to cultural preservation and the decolonization of the mind.
That's a really powerful note to end on. But there's also that crucial caveat the source includes, right?
Ah, yes, the reminder about critical thinking.
Which feels really important after hearing all these strong claims. It explicitly says, do not accept everything in this video as truth without questioning it.
A vital piece of advice for any information consumption.
Totally. It directly encourages you, the listener, to research, investigate, and seek understanding yourself. It acknowledges not everything shown to us is always the truth.
And that evaluating sources is critical.
Right. He uses that great analogy. A PhD in management doesn't make someone an expert in space exploration unless validated otherwise. Check the credentials. Check the bias.
And it ties that directly back to Muller.
The same thing happens, it says, as it did with Indian scriptures, when a person without Sanskrit knowledge distorted them decades ago. It's about intellectual honesty, individual responsibility.
Critical inquiry is key, always.
Especially now. And that applies to everything, doesn't it? This final point really empowers the listener to continue their own journey.
Okay, so to try and wrap up this deep dive, we've navigated through some really profound claims, haven't we? A systematic British conspiracy, allegedly, to distort Vedic knowledge.
With Max Muller cast in a very controversial role.
Indeed. We've looked at how alleged flawed translations, presented as deliberate, not accidental, were supposedly coupled with a broader colonial agenda.
Aiming to alienate people from their cultural roots.
Using tactics like dismantling the Gurukul system, and even, according to the source, introducing and codifying the caste system as a tool for division.
And the argument is this led to a lasting legacy of self-doubt, this mental servitude.
Deeply impacting identity. But importantly, the source doesn't just leave it there. It offers a path forward.
Through education, going back to the original text, critical thinking.
As a means of reclaiming heritage and asserting identity.
Absolutely. It's definitely a challenging perspective, maybe uncomfortable for some, but undeniably vital to consider. And what really stands out for me is that core message about engaging with history actively.
Questioning narratives.
Rigorously questioning narratives, seeking out original sources. This deep dive has given us a fascinating, maybe contentious, but definitely thought-provoking lens on colonial impact.
On cultural identity, on a civilization's self-understanding.
It really makes you think about the power of narratives, doesn't it? So what does this all mean for you, our listener, as you go forward?
Well, I think this whole discussion really invites us to consider just how deeply ingrained historical narratives can become, especially those maybe born from contested interpretations or powerful agendas.
How they shape society's view of itself.
Exactly, and its place in the world. It raises a question that goes way beyond just this specific history we've talked about today.
Which is?
Where else in our modern world right now might you be unknowingly accepting theories as proven principles, simply because they're widely repeated, widely propagated?
Without really digging into where they came from.
Or the motives of the people who first proposed them, or even their actual expertise in the first place. It's really a call for maybe universal intellectual vigilance.
A reminder to always question the source.
Always question the source.